Welcome to the Inside View. I'm Ralph Renzulli, your host. Thank you for watching. This is my continuing series of interviews with 12 candidates for 8 seats on the City Common Council. The election is November 4th. Early voting starts October 25th. So I have with me today Sam Roorda. Sam is running for his seat in Ward 1. Sam, thanks for coming in. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Ralph.
As I mentioned, we're going to keep this to 30 minutes, and all the candidates get the same questions to keep things fair. So let's start out with this. Just give me a little personal background on you.
Well, I'm a lifelong resident of Little Falls. Went to high school here, started high school here in 8th grade, and I grew up on a farm in St. Johnsville. I bounced back and forth between St. John's and Little Falls, started going to school here. My mom lived here, my father lived in St. Johnsville. But yeah, I grew up on a farm and started going to high school here in 8th grade. And then after school, went to college, went in the construction field, started off as an inspector for the DOT, and now I've been an investigator with the Bureau of Public Works for going on 18 years now. So.
Okay, great. So, why are you running for Common Council?
Simplest answer to that is the financial state of the city. The things that I learned last year really made me angry. Never thought I'd ever see myself running for any type of political office. I mean, I don't know if I'm not a politician. I never have been. I never will be. But this is something I feel is very important. I feel strongly about. Some good people need to step up and help save the city. So when I found out that we were on the verge of Chapter 9 last year, and the city had a deficit of $2.8 million, I think, something like that, negative balance, I should say. Yeah, it was. And the things I learned that led to that were really upsetting. Yeah, that's the simplest answer,
Okay.
We've got a long road ahead of us.
When you think about the role of an alderman, what's that mean to you? What in your mind, what is an effective alderman?
Well, first and foremost, being an alderman is being of public service, and I think serving the public is a whole different animal, different mentality. I think a lot of times you see this a lot with politicians, even with aldermen, even some of our aldermen in the past. They lose sight of the fact that they're there to serve us, to serve their constituents, to serve their community. Some of them have a tendency of feeling like they're in a position of power. They think they're important. It's a little bit of self-importance sitting in that seat. And that really rubbed me the wrong way, some of the things I saw last year. So being an alderman means you work for the people that elected you. You work for your constituents. You answer to them. If I get elected, I don't answer to the mayor. I don't answer to the other council members. I don't answer to other city officials. I answer to you, the constituents in the first ward that elected me. And I think sometimes people forget that. Elected servants forget that. So, first and foremost, that's what being an alderman means, is remembering every day you work for the people that elected you. You answer to them. You're there to serve them.
What skills and experience do you have that's going to help you be that effective alderman that you're talking about?
Well, professionally, I've served on boards for about 12 or 13 years now. Planning board, Board of Public Works, and the Board of Assessors. I'm no longer on the planning board, but about 12 or 13 years of that really being on the Board of Public Works is really my favorite, because it really puts you in the loop of a lot of things that are going on in the city. And, I've developed a really good rapport with the city engineer over the years and the DPW superintendent. So that gives me good firsthand experience as far as different operations of the city. Personally, I've always considered myself a person who just does things, a man of action. I don't talk about doing things. I don't complain on Facebook, social media. If I see a problem or concern, I go straight to the source. The previous mayor, Mayor Blask, Mayor Peters, if I had a concern, go straight to City Hall, find out what we can do to fix it. Over the years, I've never been overly involved with different committees and stuff. I mean, you got some wonderful things in the city, Canal Celebration, the Cheese Festival, Main Street First, Preserve Our Past, Garlic Fest, all these things going on in the city that people devote countless hours to. I've never been overly involved with that, but from a personal level, when I see something needs to be done, I do it. I had about 10 years ago, I had an idea for Moreland Park. I approached our city clerk, who contacted our county legislator, who contacted James Seward, and I was able to spearhead a $50,000 grant for Moreland Park. When I had some issues with, there was some paving going on a few years ago, and our street, this Furnace Street leading up to our neighborhood, wasn't in it. So I called Mayor Blask and I said, hey, what can we do to get this stretch is really bad. It's long overdue. What can we do, to get this done? And he pulled some strings and got about a quarter-mile section of Furnace Street paved for us. Some other minor things, stop signs. There's some intersections where there's no stop signs, and I see cars blowing through there every day. I've written letters to traffic committee to get stop signs put in places. So little things like that. When I see something, I don't complain about it to my neighbors. I don't say, geez, why isn't the city not doing anything? The city as a whole doesn't notice all these little things that are going on. So you as a resident, when you see something that is amiss or is a problem or is dangerous, you contact City Hall, you bring it to their attention, and see if you can get it resolved. And that's just the way I look at things. That's the way I approach everything. If I see something that's a problem, I try and do something about it. I think it's really that simple, and that's my approach. With running for alderman, I'm not waiting to see if I get elected before I do things. The minute I announced early this year that I was running, I started talking to people, find out what their concerns were, find out what things needed to be done. And I started doing them. There's been a lot of issues with speeding in the city. It's the same offenders, doing 40, 50 miles an hour down residential streets where kids are playing. So I jumped on top of that. I have, some complaints about junk. People have the front yards turning into a junkyard. So I almost feel like I'm already an alderman because I get several people contacting me every week. The past month has been slow, but I would say from the minute I announced I was running for alderman until, July or August, I'd get several people messaging me every week saying, hey, there's junk over here. Is this an encampment? Can you look into this for us? So, I've been tackling a lot of issues all year long, at the request of residents in the First Ward. So,
okay. Let's move on to something else.
Fair.
In the interest of time.
Yeah.
What are the top 3 issues or problems facing Little Falls right now?
Well, number one, obviously, is the financial state of the city. I think everybody's pretty aware of that. Second thing is not just the current financial state, but the future of how are we going to increase, our city's revenue, in the future years. How do we bring in more investors, more development? How do we, the population is been decreasing consistently for a lot of years now, and really drastically since COVID. As you already know, as you touched upon this in your interview with Mayor Kaufman about how, 45% of properties in Little Falls are, tax exempt, and the late Rocco Scarano, God rest his soul, he told people he believed it was more like 51 or 52%, so number one, financial state of the city. Number two, bringing in more development and how to increase the population of the city to bring in more tax revenue. Number three, I have to go with what I've been hearing from my constituents. and that is homelessness is a really big concern for them. It looks like Mayor Kaufman has really done a good job with combating that, and we had some homeless encampments in town when she first took over. Those are cleaned up now. There's still some concerns. I hear concerns from residents all the time. Would that be the number 3 concern? I don't know, but that seems to be the number 3 concern. It should make number 3 based on everything I'm hearing from residents, you know.
So as an alderman, you just mentioned those 3 things. As an alderman, and you're one of 8. Mm-hmm. How do you approach trying to contribute to solving these problems as an alderman? Mm-hmm.
Well, I think, in simplest terms, I need to cast my votes in a manner that is going to be in favor of bringing industry to Little Falls, more development to Little Falls, increasing, being attractive to residents, people relocating to Little Falls. There's some hard decisions that need to be made. One thing I am going to do, I commend Mayor Kaufman for saying this earlier this year, that she said, we've raised some things for the, for residents, from the taxpayers. Water and sewer has been increased, taxes have been increased, and she said we can't keep going back to the taxpayers to fix our problems. We're already overburdened, and I am going. Me personally, as an alderman, I'm going to hold to that. I know there's some things going on right now that are costing a lot of money. The water treatment plant. I mean, we're talking between $8 and $9 million for the UV disinfection plant down the wastewater treatment plant, and then the membrane trailer system up there at the plant up there on Top Notch. As you just probably noticed recently, our water and sewer is already increased. So my votes I am not going to cast any votes that are going to place any more burden, any more increase on residents. I think that's important. There's other avenues to pursue. So
if the mayor wanted to raise taxes, you would be?
I would be against that.
Be voting against that. Okay. Well, it's important to know.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. You mentioned earlier that you're accountable to your constituents. How do you intend, if you were elected, how would you intend to stay in contact with those constituents on a regular basis?
Well, social media is a good tool to do that. In the past, I mean, I've been a tax-paying adult in this city for 30 years now, and it's always been my biggest complaint regarding, my aldermen. It was that I never hear from them. I never know what's going on. So I'm going to use social media to keep the residents apprised of what's going on. It doesn't really take a lot to just let residents know where things stand. They just want to know where things stand on a regular basis. You don't have to get bogged down in the weeds with all the details and everything else, but I run into that a lot with residents like, well, what's going on with this? What's going on with that? So, and I've been doing that as best as I can so far this year, just keeping, residents apprised of, through my alderman Facebook page. So that's probably going to be my main tool.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there are 2 other candidates running.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it's interesting. This year there are 3 candidates in every single ward, so there's a total of 12. But anyway, what sets you apart from your competition this year?
What sets me apart? I go the extra mile. I haven't really been in public service before. I've never held a political office. I mean, for my job, I was a union steward. I was a union treasurer for our entire division for almost 10 years. But I've never held political office. But I think just going that extra mile, going that extra step to trying to think of the best way to word it. I don't sit on things. When somebody brings something to my attention that's concern for them, the first thing I'm going to do is talk to other residents and see if they share the same concerns. Is this a bigger problem than what it seems, or is this just one person's gripe? But somebody brings something. I don't care if 20 people bring an issue to me or if it's one person. If you're one person with an issue that's concerning, it needs to be addressed, obviously. So, I don't sit on my hands. When if I hear of an issue that needs to be addressed, I address it immediately and I see it through.
Okay.
It's really that simple. I got a little long-winded there, but that's probably the simplest explanation of what I think what makes me stand out.
Define for me the proper relationship between an alderman, alderperson, and the mayor of the city. How do you look at that?
Well, there definitely has to be a professional and mutual respect, mutual collaboration. The mayor is the things I've learned that she has done since she took office is pretty amazing. When she was first campaigning for mayor, I didn't know who she was. The first interview I heard from her, I wasn't a fan initially. But once you really start to see what she has done, it's amazing. The tireless hours and the contacts she's made to save the city. But let me get back on track. I'm rambling again. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
So, I mentioned earlier that I don't work for the mayor. I don't answer the mayor. I don't work for the council. I don't answer the council. I answer to constituents. But obviously, whatever, even if I have a good working rapport with the council members and the mayor, but even if you didn't, it's important to put aside any political differences, any personal differences of opinion. You need to put those aside to work together to do what's best for the city. And, regardless of whatever disagreements or different positions I have with the mayor, if my constituents feel strongly about a direction something should be taking or a way a vote should go, I'm going to vote against her if that's what my constituents want. That doesn't mean the relationship between myself and the mayor has to be adversarial. It doesn't have to be adversarial at all. But there has to be a mutual respect and a mutual professional collaboration. Absolutely.
How do you feel about her level of transparency and her ability to communicate with people in the city?
There's things I wish she got out in front of more.
For example?
I guess the budget would be one. When she released, she made the budget available to the public, but from my understanding, that's not something that's ever been done before. But budgets are not an easy thing to read or understand, So, there's a lot of line items that were taken out and put in different areas. And one of them was the city pool. A lot of people thought, they took the city pool out of the budget. No, it's just some things were shifted around. And, it's great that she made that public, and she made it known that if they had any questions, she's willing to sit down with anybody to explain the budget. I just wish she had maybe put a couple of asterisks along with the release of the budget, and and bullet pointed a few things. That's one thing that I noticed. A lot of people were really misreading that budget, and we're concerned. Rightfully so.
It's a complicated thing, and this is something I thought about when that budget came out. And as I was looking at it, coming up with some of the same questions a lot of other people had. But I picked the phone up and I called her and I asked her, which I think is a good thing to do. But I think to put that out there publicly on social media or on the city website, and to include a lot of notes and as to why certain decisions were made, I think that could get very unwieldy and out of hand. I think it would be difficult to do. But I do agree with you that there should be some sort of a mechanism to explain in good detail what it's all about. Because I think a lot of people did have a lot of questions. The real estate that was being sold, that city owns, that sort of thing. People wondered about that.
Yeah.
At any rate, moving on. Describe for me your approach if you were dealing with one of your colleagues, another alderman, where you had a fairly large disagreement. How do you handle that?
Very simple. Sit down and have a conversation. You know, if it's something that can be tabled, or if it's something that if you're in council chambers and you have to vote on it, you know, I don't know. I'm not an alderman, so I don't know the process there. Where, you know, when things can be tabled, when they can't. I don't know. But I mean, everything breaks down when you don't talk, when you don't communicate, when you don't, you don't try to understand where each other is coming from. You know, so. I mean, it really is that simple. I mean, if you have different opinions on the direction something should go in or the way something should be voted on, then you sit down and you talk about it. And, you know, if I wanted to vote one way and the rest of the council wanted to vote a different way, I'd be thinking to myself, okay, what do they know that I don't? You know, why are all of you for this and I'm against it? Maybe there's something I'm not seeing here. Mm-hmm. So I would talk to all of them, say, tell me why you are voting for this. You know, what is it that you know that I don't? What is it that you're aware of that maybe I'm not aware of? You know, because if they're all voting in favor of something and I'm not, I want to know why before I say no, you know, and vice versa, you know. So conversation, dialogue, open dialogue is a very, very big thing that nobody seems to want to do anymore. You know, there's a lot of, always seems to be, you know, there's old grudges, there's bad blood sometimes, and, you know, this council member might not like that council member, they've never gotten along. You got to put that aside, you know, and that's coming from me. I can hold a grudge. I mean, I'm not the Dalai Lama by any means, okay? You know, so, you know, I got to retrain my brain a little bit too, but I think one thing that I've always been good at is listening to other people's positions and opinions and being open to them, you know. So council members have to do that. We all have to do that with each other. So
getting back to Ward 1, I asked you earlier about the three big problems facing Little Falls. Give me three problems that right now exist in your ward that you would work on.
Paving, number one. We got some streets that are in really bad shape. Furnace Street is one of them. The lower half of Furnace Street is in very bad shape, and I actually had a conversation with our city engineer not that long ago because it wasn't on the list for paving this year or next year, and so I had a conversation with him about how strongly I felt about that. It's in bad shape. Everybody that lives up in the area of Church Street, West Monroe Street, a lot of them, when they go to Herkimer, they cut down the Furnace Street and go down Furnace Street and then turn right and outside to go to Herkimer. So Furnace Street is it's not just for the residents. It's kind of an arterial for most people. So, you know, we discussed that. He looked into it and he's going to, barring any extenuating circumstances. So I don't want to say it's 100% guaranteed, but it's on the list to be paved next year now. So that's something that paving's a big issue. Garbage. There's a lot of homes that have garbage piling up out in front. The codes enforcers been tackling that. But there's only so much that she can do. There's a lot that's still allowable within the confines of codes.
Well, when you say garbage, you're talking about weekly garbage or just junk?
No. Well, there's
trash.
Not the typical garbage we put out every week. Just Hoarding. I mean,
Okay.
most of it is a lot of just junk, that's it's piling up, old, whether it's old furniture or old lawnmowers or old whatever. That there's a lot of unsightly things in people's front yards. I guess that's a broad paint stroke. There's a lot of unsightly things in front yards that have been a real concern for residents.
I think that's true in just about every ward.
True. That is true. Yeah. What would be a third one? Speeding. Again, that would be applicable to every ward too, but I know it's a big deal in my ward and it's a big concern in my ward. So that's something that absolutely has to be addressed. And I've been addressing it. It sounds like they got one of the offenders under control. I haven't seen this particular car speeding the past couple times I've seen this vehicle. He's going at a comfortable speed. Another issue, you said 3, but here this kind of ties into, there's been a lot of complaints. There's some tight areas in my ward where cars are parking too close to the intersection. So there's blind spots. You can't really see when you pull up to the stop sign. The perpendicular traffic doesn't have stop sign, and it's hard to see. There's at the intersection of Prospect and Church, at the intersect of Arthur and Church, and then up there at the triangle there where Church Street meets West Monroe Street. So that's a real concern that I've heard from a lot of residents. So that's something that is that I have been addressing. It's hasn't been fully resolved. I don't think it's ever going to be fully resolved. It's just always going to be an ongoing battle. People have a tendency of driving fast, not paying attention.
I totally understand. I live on West Monroe Street, so I could go down a rabbit hole with that one, but I won't.
Yeah. And I can't say that I've never been an offender myself. I have a heavy foot. I don't do 50 miles an hour down a residential street, but I can't say that I don't exceed the speed limit. So, I came to the realization earlier this year that, I got to put my money where my mouth is.
Well, that's for sure.
So, I'm very mindful of my speed now because, you don't want to come across being a hypocrite, so I got to be careful. I might, the more I push for this, who knows? I might be one of those people who ends up getting a ticket. Hey, what's good for the goose, right?
Sam, where would you like to see our city 5 years from now?
I'd love to see us flourishing. I'd love to see us. I'd love to see our revenue outweigh our expenditures. That would be nice. That would be a good start. I think our expenditures are like over $7 million, and our revenue is like $3.5 million, something like that. I forget the exact numbers, but it's it's bad. So, I don't want to set the bar low and just say I just want our revenue to exceed our expenditures, but I want to see us flourishing. And I think there's some good things in the pipeline. Once we get a couple of our reservoirs back online, there's 2 reservoirs that are crucial. They're active. They're full right now, even with all this drought. Levels are down, but they're full, but they're not online. And once we get those online, the city engineer said we're looking about 5 to 7 years of, before we reach the point where we can be able to have everything operational, where we can start selling, that water to neighboring municipalities, and that's going to be anywhere from $1 to $3 million a year in revenue just from that. That's 5 to 7 years away, but we've got some good things coming. We got the bed and breakfast thing, not bed and breakfast, the hospitality resort up there that's going up by Millennium Court. I mean, there's a lot of good things in the pipeline right now. The old Berkshire Bank dispensary that's going in there. I don't know what's going on with the CVS building. I was told there's some people looking at it. Don't want anything really revealed yet. So, the city's staying tight-lipped on that to respect the investors and developers' wishes on that. But yeah, I want to see this city flourishing and our population increasing 5 years from now. And if nothing catastrophic happens, from everything I've learned in the past year, talks I've had with the city engineer and the mayor, the trajectory that everything is on right now, the trajectory that's in place right now, if everything keeps going the way that it is, we don't have any catastrophic setbacks, we'll achieve that, 5 to 7 years from now. So,
Okay.
fingers crossed.
We're getting to the end here.
Okay.
Final thoughts, comments?
Final thoughts and comments. Well, I don't have a final thought or a comment. I do have an ask. I ask people that are voting, when you're running for alderman, this isn't partisan politics. Really don't come in. They shouldn't come into play. And all I ask of people is to look for the right person for the right reasons to vote for. Don't look at whether they're an independent or a Democrat or Republican. I know there's some partisan politics being played right now. Trying to recruit support for this candidate or that candidate just because of their party affiliation. So rather than a final thought, that's an ask I would have of people is look at the candidate based on what you think they can bring. Based on what you think they could bring to the city, to you, to your ward, to your community. Not just don't look at their party affiliation.
Good way to end it.
So, yeah, that's all I ask.
That's Sam Roorda running in Ward 1 for council. He's on a Republican ticket. Thank you for watching. We appreciate it.